This class is basically is an interactive one where we wanted to uh, have some discussion on the topics which we have already taught, and any doubts if you have rather uh, having in your mind, you can probably ask and then get it clear. Yesterday's recorded class is published in YouTube, and then it was shared in your groups. Even in classroom, it is there. So those who have not attended yesterday's class, they can listen to the recorded lecture, which is available in your group and classrooms. Okay, continuing with the same, fine. Yesterday we have solved certain questions like how to construct the past tree for a given grammar for a particular statement, right? And what is ambiguous grammar, and how you are going to prove ambiguous grammar by constructing two past trees using that grammar for a particular statement. You can prove that it is an ambiguous, and how you can overcome also we have discussed the last class. And then prefix to infix to prefix and infix to postfix we have seen. And but then it was since covering both the units, unit 1 and unit 2. So I wanted to take a recap of the same. So I am discussing the questions that are given in assignment 1. And the subsequent classes wherein our co-teachers will take the subsequent units. Here it is, right? Yeah, let us look at this questions. What is coercion? Coercion is nothing but implicit type conversion, right? Where the language itself will take care of converting from one type to another. If you have declared a variable as integer, but you are giving some float value, and that float value will be converted into integer. Basically, there are two types of conversion which are being used while the programming languages adopt this type conversion mechanism. One is narrowing, another one is widening. Okay, I hope you know it, right? Can you recall it? Can any one of you tell me what is narrowing and what is widening? I'm seeing the reduction in number. Why? Any one of you? Tell me what is narrowing. Like for example, if you are giving float kind of value for an integer, then what happens? Narrowing process will take place. It will remove the fractional part, take only the integral, and then that will be treated as integer value for the quick variable. Okay. Widening, but most of it uses narrowing, of course, because in widening, memory requirement is there, right? Memory issue comes, right? For example, you have a float variable and you are assigning some, let us say, integer value, that's fine. But for integer, if you are, let us say, assigning some float value, and if the language has adopted widening process, then that float value must have to be stored, which is not possible. Why? Because you have only the integer memory, which is less than compared to your float kind. So most of the languages adopt this narrowing process, of course, right? While they are doing this conversion, type conversion. So we have both explicit and implicit in C language. If you see C or C++ and all, Java. And some language specifically like Java, where you have only explicit type conversion, right? So that is what here the question is. Differentiate, break, and continue. Can any one of you tell the answer for this? Break will break the loop. Continue will allow the execution for the for the next iteration by skipping the forward statement. Yes. Yeah, I want this answer from some one from your side. What is the difference between lifetime and scope? Yes.
Time, how long the variable will have that value. Scope will be where the variable can be used.
Yeah, to some extent, but exactly like when you have some variable for which we know that memory will be allocated, right? So how long the memory will be associated with that particular variable is what the lifetime is. Okay. When you declare a variable, as we know that with certain data type, the memory will be allocated based on the amount of memory required for the particular type specified by the particular language designer. For example, in C, as we know that for integer 2 bytes is required. In Java, integer is 4 bytes. It varies, right, from language to language again. So, for example, if you have a variable declared, right, int A, this is the block, right, in which it was declared. So, if I have to access this A here, can I access here? I cannot access. Why? A is declared within this particular scope, right? So the part of the text in which it is accessible is what's said to be the scope, right? What is scope? Part of text where a particular variable is accessible, is said to be the scope, right? So for A, what is the scope of A? It is from here till here, right? Because it is declared in this block, right? And this block is being ended here. You may have another block, right? There may be another outer block. Let us say this is said to be the outer block from this particular block point of view. This is said to be the inner block, right? This is inner block. This is the outer block. The A is declared inner block, inside the inner block. So it is accessible only within this particular inner block. Right, so the scope of A is only within this particular block. If I want to access A here outside this block, I cannot access, right? Not accessible. Why? Because the scope of A is over here itself, right? This is what scope is actually. I hope you understand what is scope. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, then what is lifetime? Lifetime means, as I said, the how long the memory, how long the memory created for a particular variable is associated with it. Is associated with it. Is said to be lifetime of that variable. You can note down. As this precise definition you don't find in any book. I'm giving you some precise definitions here. How long the memory created for a particular variable associated with that variable is said to be its lifetime. In the sense here, for example, you take the same. You have declared a variable A. So for A, as we know, that memory is going to be allocated, right? So this is your memory, RAM, which we call it as, right? Primary memory. So during the execution, memory will be allocated from your system memory, that is RAM. So for A, let us say 2 bytes of memory required. So let us say 2 bytes of memory been allocated. Whose address, let us say some 200, okay? Now, this A is associated with this memory until A, is having its scope, but in between, let us say, switching from this program to another program happened. Okay, because we got multitasking nowadays, right? This is one program and this is another program. Let us say you have deactivated it for a while and activated this. We generally do it even in our mobiles, right? You open multiple applications at the same time. And when you focus on an application, it is in execution. When the other one is unfocused, it means it is deactivated. But it is available. It is available, but then deactivated. So what happens when this is deactivated for a while, the memory created for this may be used for these program variables, right? Okay. So before that, some amount of time, before you have unfocused it, for some amount of time, this memory was associated with this particular A. That is said to be the lifetime with A during that time, okay? And when you unfocus it and the other program is activated, this memory could be there or could have been used by this particular program variables. Then what happens? Again, when you focus this, the memory required for A may not be from here, it may be from here. Because again, when you focus, again for A, memory has to be allocated. So the memory which is now going to be allocated for A for the next time, it may not be from the same place where it was. It may be some other place. The address may be something else, right? So the next time when you are, accessing the memory which is associated with A is this one. Again, during this particular execution or focus time, how long that memory is associated with that particular variable is said to be the lifetime during that time. So lifetime will be changed. It is not fixed. Lifetime will be changed. But for static variable, what is static variable? Anyone of you tell me what is static variable? If I declare this variable as a static, how do you declare with any variable as a static with the help of static keyword? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. When I declare a variable as a static, what happens? This memory will be constant. Though this program is unfocused, this will not be taken away by any other program. Got it? So once allocated, for A, memory is allocated here. That will be fixed and constant. Okay. Though you unfocus this and you have gone to another program, so that program variable if requires some memory, but they cannot use this memory. This is reserved now, right? Though it is not in use because it is unfocused, right? It is not in use, but still it is reserve for this A. When you again come back here, after program 2, when you come back here, for A, when you see, the lifetime will be same. So for static variables, lifetime is constant, right? Are fixed, right? It will not change. Got it? But for other variables, it will be change, right? I hope you understand. Yes. Did you get the idea?
Yes, sir.
Sir, can we say that lifetime is limited by the scope of the variable?
Lifetime is limited by the scope. See, one thing is, when there is no scope, basically, if it is not a static variable, then the memory which is retained with A may be available or may not be available. We do not know. It is all being taken care by the operating system, right? So we cannot say. When it is, let us say, A scope, where the A scope is out, here A scope is out, right? When A scope is out, you cannot access it. But the memory associated with that A may be available. Or may not be available. Fine. That's the reason why we can't basically, link scope with lifetime. But yeah, the definition in some conditions, some situation, it may apply. Right? Is it clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is all about lifetime and scope. So this is one important question. List out different type of bindings: early binding and late binding. What are they? Early and when will the early binding happens? Yes, when the memory is get binded to that variable during the compile time. Before runtime, if it happens, it is said to be compiling is done before runtime or after runtime. It is before runtime, right? So if the binding is happened before runtime, that is during compile time, it is said to be early binding. Got it? When do you find this compile time binding happens? When you declare the variable with certain data type like this, int A or float A, or, float B kind of thing in C or C++ or, what happens? Memory will be allocated required during the compile time itself, right? Late binding is when the memory get binded to that variable during the runtime. Okay. When does it happen? When you use new operator, right? In C++. Or in C language, we have certain libraries called malloc, calloc, realloc, right? So using this, you can create the memory during runtime. In C, you can create it using new operator. In Java, memory will be created only during runtime. Got it? You will create the object. For example, you have an object of a student class, right? How do you create my student class? If you have, right, my student, let us say my object equal to new my student. Yes or no? This is how you create an object in Java. It means in Java only late binding happens. Got it? But whereas in C++, both the options are there. Both are there in C++. I hope it is clear to all of you. Yes. Is it clear? What is early binding? What is late binding? And how does it happen in which language? What type of bindings are available and all kind of thing. See, the next question is what is static variable in C language? Just now I have discussed. What is the lifetime of the same? Can any one of you tell me? What does it get binded with memory? Yes, please tell me the answer for 37. Just now I have discussed. Nidish Rao, are you there or all of you have left the room? Yes?
Static variables will preserve their value until they are even when they are out of the scope.
Yeah, memory associated with the static will be
Program.
with fixed with it, right?
Yes.
It's a constant. I mean, lifetime is constant, the other way around it is, right? What is the lifetime of the same? Lifetime is constant. It is. When does it get binded with memory? When does it get binded with memory? Did you understand the question? Yes?
It will be initialized with value 0.
When does it get binded? It means is it at the compile time or runtime?
Before.
Yes. It's runtime. Okay. Fine. Next question is here you can see differentiate keywords and reserved words. Can any one of you tell me the answer for this? See in C language, how many keywords are there? What is keyword?
Keyword will have some special meaning, part of syntax.
Yes. What is keyword and what is reserved word? What is reserved word?
Reserved words can't be used as identifier names.
Reserved words cannot be used as identifiers. What is your name?
Faraz.
Good. So keywords can be used, right? For example, in Fortran it happens, right? For example, in Fortran language, if you take where real can be used as real data type, that means keyword. At the same time, it can be used as a variable. Okay, you can do that. How many keywords are there in C language?
32.
Yeah, in C there are 32. Can you say they are the reserved words also? Yes, they are reserved word because can you use this as variable? You can't use. Have you used int as a variable in C language? Have you used for as a variable? Have you used struct as a variable? No, it means these keywords are reserved words here. Got it? I hope it is clear. In C++, how many keywords are there? Have you counted? Have you used? You have already studied C++, I think, right?
We have 64. 90. 64.
Bool is also added over the time. There are few keywords added later, but initially it was 58 actually. There were a few more added in the latest version. Fine. So yeah, this is all about this question. Coming to list out the design issues of names. Yes, while declaring the names in the sense when you are declaring variable or identifier and all, what are the design issues you have to keep in mind? In C
Case.
language, yeah, C language, if you take it, is it case sensitive or
Yes, sir. This case sensitive.
yeah, in C language it is case sensitive. What could be the maximum length of the name in C language you can have? See, limitation here when we talk about issues, it will have length issue, right? All the languages will limit the length of any variable. You can't have a name of a variable of 50 character or 100 character. Yes or no? In C language, it is limited to 32, I think, right? 32 characters, maximum of 32 characters you can have. And uh, issues like, basically when you are declaring names, you have to even ensure that it has to start with any alphabet. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Huh? And what special symbols are allowed? Only few are allowed. Hyphen is not allowed. Yes or no? Because hyphen is being used as a
Space.
minus. Yeah. So
Spaces
hyphen
are-
you cannot use. You cannot use dot, right? You cannot use at the rate. Underscore is allowed. Fine. For example, if you want to declare a variable of student name kind, student underscore name, I can have like this, right? If it is a string, let us say, for example, character student name of, let us say, 20 characters. Got it? So student underscore name, student hyphen name I cannot say. Okay, student dot name I cannot say. So it means languages to languages they differ from restricting the special character while you are declaring the names, right? So these are all comes under issues. What could be the length of the name and what it should start with? What it should start with and special characters, okay, are they allowed or not, right? Why? Because if you are allowing all these things, then issues comes. For example, all special characters are allowed. Let us say dot is allowed, and if let us, for example, you have declared a variable as student dot name, but dot is basically being used in C language as a membership operator. So it may think that this is a membership operator, and considering that this has a structure and then this has a member of the same, it will look for a structure of student kind. If it does not find, it will raise an error. Yes or no? So these are the issues basically. So because of which all these languages are following certain rules by which they overcome these issues. I hope this is clear to all of you. Yes.
Yes, sir.
What define operator precedence? In last class I have discussed. What is operator associativity? Precedence is the priorities of the operators that you set, right? It is going to be set by the language designer. As we have taken one example for arithmetic operators, right? Operator precedence associativity, there are two rules. You have left associativity and right associativity, right? This always happens. Define 3 string length options. Yes. You can limit it with the help of an array, or you can probably go with a pointer kind where you have flexible size, right? Yes or no? If you declare it with the help of character array, for example, taking C language only into consideration, right? Name, I have 20, if I say, then 20 will be the length, right? It is fixed. So memory for this particular name will be allocated with 20 bytes because each character takes 1 byte in C language, right? But if I want to have a flexible length, then I can probably go with pointer option, right? In C language, you have a pointer option. So if I go with this, then I can have any character length, right? I can have 5 characters, 10 or 20 or 100. It depends on the number of characters that you input during the runtime. So this will basically affect utilization of memory, right? Because only based on the inputs that you give, the memory will be allocated, and then the characters will be stored in the same, and the first byte address and nothing but the first character address will be returned into this pointer, and pointer will point to the entire string, right? Whereas here, what happens in the character array concept, all 20 character memory is being allocated to this particular variable. Though you use it or not, it will be associated the same. If I'm using only 5 characters, then 50 character memory will be wasted. If I need 21 characters to be inputted here, I cannot input because it's only 20 characters. So that's a limitation here. Anyway, these are the different options which we have in C language, I have said, right? Anyway, so I think I hope this is clear to you, right? Now looking at some long questions. Now, these questions we have discussed, right? The questions which I am discussing, they are helpful because most of them are I am discussing important questions. So please focus on this. The last class I have discussed how to draw the parse tree for the given grammar, and if the grammar is given ambiguous, how do you prove? How will you prove? And the weakest condition, you have to compute the weakest precondition and all. And BNF, EBNF grammar for assignment statement, it is discussed in previous class. Just go through it. It is also one of the important questions. Syntax and semantics. What is the difference between syntax and semantics? Syntax is a set of rules that govern whether a sentence is well formed or not. Whereas semantic is going to tell the implementation of the same, implementation of the particular statement. How does it going to be interpreted? For example, you have a first statement. How the first statement is going to be executed is going to be told by this operational semantics, right? For example, you have first statement. For I equal to 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. You have certain statements. What happens first? Initialization. This is initialization, right? This is testing condition. And this is incrementation or decrementation. So how does this for loop works? As we know that initialization first takes place, right? Then you have the block, for example, block 1 here. Then block 1, the for block is going to be executed. But before that, what happens? Condition is going to be tested. So here you can see that first the condition is going to be tested, right? So testing condition. If the condition is true, then block is going to be executed. The condition is true, it will be allowed inside the block. Once executed, the block will come to the increment or decrement, right? Increment or decrement. Then what happens? Where do you go? You go back to again check the condition, right? And again, if it is true, you will be allowed inside the block and then increment, decrement. This way, it will be in a loop until the condition is false. When the condition is false, you will come on to the next statement. Yes or no? This is the syntax diagram of the first statement. Nothing but the interpretation of the first statement, which is said to be the operational semantics. Okay. You have two types of semantics, static semantics and dynamic semantics. Operational semantics is said to be what? Dynamic semantics. Okay. Static semantic means attribute grammar. We have discussed this in the previous classes. You can go through this. Attribute grammar. When you have certain operations wherein while performing you want to restrict it with certain conditions, which is not possible with simple BNF grammar, right? So you go with attribute grammar. Like for example, you are trying to add two values. You have defined one assignment statement using the grammar. Then you want to restrict the operation while being performed, that the values are over which the addition operation has to take place, they should belong to certain type, let us say. So that type you want to check, type compatibility you want to check. When you want to check the type, you want to ensure that only when the values are of integer kind, only then they can be undergo with the integer addition. Okay. Otherwise, you will be, preventing it from going with that particular operation at all. Fine. In such kind of situation, in order to ensure the type compatibility of the values and all kind of thing, which is not possible with the help of simple BNF grammar. Okay. So in that situation, you go with attribute grammar. Fine. Attribute grammar. One example I have taken it for type compatibility and I have explained it. I think that is available in one of my video. You can probably check it, right? This is one example that I have discussed. Fine. And BNF, Baker's norm form, this is the context-free grammar we call it as, right? So for assignment statements and many of the programming statements, we can define the grammar using the BNF. But when you have certain issues of this kind, which is not possible with BNF, so we go with attribute grammar, which is said to be the static semantics. Okay. And in order to compress the statement which you declare with the help of BNF, we are using eBNF. What is eBNF basically? Extended BNF, right? What it does have? What are the three, notations that eBNF has? Can any one of you tell me? Yes? You have parentheses, braces, and you have vertical bar. This is being used for OR. When you have multiple options, you can go with this OR. And this parenthesis will tell you, basically when you have optional part, you can go with this. Right? When you have 0 or more, then you can go with this. Right? And you have square brackets. When you have 1 or more, you can go with this, right? So 1, 2, 3. These are the three extensions that you have found in eBNF compared to BNF, right? Basically, to compress the statements, right? We use eBNF, nothing else otherwise. I hope it is clear to all of you. Yes, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Because this is also one of the questions which I have given you probably in assignment 1 only. In short, it must be there. I think here you have what are three extensions are common to most eBNFs. What are they? Parentheses, flower braces, and square brackets. Okay. Yeah, here we have this. You can see distinguish between static and dynamic semantics. Just now I have discussed, right? Static is attribute grammar, dynamic is operational semantics. One example you can mention of the same, right? What is readability? How is it important to writability? What is dangling pointer? What is aliasing? When multiple pointers are pointing same memory, say it is aliasing. When one of them out of which is, have imposed the restrictions over it and used it, the other will be left dummy. The one who left dummy is said to be the dangling pointer. Okay. So this is all about what we have. Abstract data type is what which has the specification but does not have the implementation. For example, structure or your class and all kind of thing. So defining the syntax for if else if for I have shown you. Similarly, for if else in all you can probably. What is pre-test and post-test loops? Yes, anyone from your class? Pretest is similar to your while kind of thing, while for where you test the condition before you go for execution, like for while in C. Post test is do while. After you execute, you test the condition, right? Like in Pascal you have repeat until. Repeat until is very similar to your do while and post test, right? A do loop kind of thing. Do loop is also a kind of post test available in Fortran. Yeah, differentiate arrays with associate arrays. Can any one of you tell the answer for this? Only 6 of you are there. Arrays with associative arrays. Basically, when you have more than one entry in the array elements, right? When you have more than one entry in the array element and you are able to access the element with the help of one of the entry of the array element, then it is said to be associative arrays. Got it? Normal arrays, what is an array? It is a set of elements stored at contiguous location, right? For example, if you declare an array of this kind in C language, A of 5, then what happens? For A memory being allocated, right? This is A of 0, A of 1, A of 2, like that, right? And how do you access this element with the help of index, right? This 0, 1, 2 is nothing but what the index is, right? But in associative array, generally being used in forest and trees and all kind of thing, in your data structure algorithms, you have 2 entries, right? 2 entries. So here you will have the root value. Here you have its parent value, child value. Or I can root or parent, I can say, right? Parent and child. So here each child value is being identified with the help of its parent. When you have 2 attributes, more than one attribute with the help of which you are able to access it, then it is said to be associative array. So basically for forests and for trees and all, we use this kind of option. So a parent, for example, if you take the binary tree, in binary tree, every parent can have more than how many childs at a maximum? 2 childs, right? But if it is not a binary tree, it is a simple tree. Simple tree can have how many child from 0 to n? Yes or no? So if you take binary tree in data, already I think you have studied data structures, well. So in binary tree, the maximum number of childs that it will have is 2. So one child here, another child is here, right? That is left child is here. This is left child and this is right child, okay? So, but both the child parent is the same, yes or no? So if I have to access any child value, I have to access it in alliance with the parent. So it means I need two attribute values in order to access any entry in this particular array. So this kind of arrays are said to be associative array. So in associative arrays, you will have multiple attributes to access any element in the array. Fine. I hope this is clear. What is floating abstraction with example? See, when you declare a float data variable, as in C language, for example, you take C or C++ example. Anyway, we know that it is going to be 4 bytes of memory being allocated. Yes or no? For A. But then, how does a float value is going to be represented? For example, you have, let us say, 215.43 or 45. Actually, in computer, this is going to be represented in the form of mantissa and exponent. Mantissa, how you have to normalize this. Fine. How do you normalize this? 0.21545 into 10 power 3. This is the normalization of this particular float value. So when you normalize this, what do you get? You get after decimal. This is said to be the mantissa part. Okay. And this is said to be the exponent. So out of these 4 bytes, how many bytes are reserved for mantissa and how many are for exponent is being hidden from the user. Is being hidden from the user. C designer also not telling anybody, C++ designer also, or even the processors when you probably buy Intel processors and all kind of thing, right? The manufacturer knows it, right? Accordingly, these designers will choose it rather, right? So this is being hidden. Hiding non-essential details from the user is said to be the abstraction. What do you mean by abstraction? Basically, hiding non-essential details or implementing from the user is said to be the abstraction. So this is said to be floating abstraction because for float data type, how much memory being reserved for mantissa and how much is reserved for exponent is being hidden from the user. This is what is said to be the floating abstraction. With an example means you can show like this, right? List out different operations on strings. What are the different operations on string? You have string length. To find the string length, we have strlen. You can take any programming language example and you can explain. String compare, you have string concatenate, you have string copy, you have yes or no? All this you can explain. Differentiate records with variant records. Records is very similar to that of your structures, and variant records is very similar to that of your union in C. You can take that example. List out the operations and structures. What kind of operation performance structure? Accessing the members of the structure with the help of membership operator. That is said to be the dereferencing operator only, right? Taking one example, he is asking you to demonstrate that dereferencing kind of option, right? Take one student structure and create a variable of the same and access their members with the help of this variable. And show. What are the design issues with pointer? We have discussed this. There is a separate video on this. You can go through it. You find aliasing, you find dangling pointer issues, right? And they are being overcome in many of the languages by restricting, by imposing the restrictions over the memory once it is created, and and then giving the address of the same to a pointer, right? Generally, 3 things will be taken care parallelly at the same time, with the help of which you can overcome that particular difficulty, right? That is creating the memory, imposing the restrictions, and then returning the base address of the same. List out the operations on pointers and explain with example what kind of operation you can perform on pointer. And you can increment pointer, but you cannot add 2 pointers. Yes or no? You cannot add 2 pointers, but you can increment. You can, if you have certain pointer, for example, p, and there is a variable called I. This p is holding the address of I. Then you can dereference it, right? I equal to, you can say for example, I equal to 2. Then with the help of pointer, you can refer the memory. This is said to be here, you know, acting as referring the memory. Referring memory, you can do that. And if I use it on the right hand side, it is said to be value it. So it is referring the memory and accessing the value from the same, right? This is said to be dereferencing operator, of course, right? This is one operation you can do, that is dereferencing, accessing. And then you can probably increment the pointer. P plus plus, you can say. If you have an array, or if you have an array of, let us say, 10, and a pointer is pointing to that array, how does it point? By assigning the name of the same to the pointer, right? P equal to, when I say P equal to A, this pointer is going to point to that array. So array name holds the base address. Base address is 100, let us say. Then the next subsequent element is 102, 104 kind of thing, right? If I use P plus plus, it is nothing but P equal to P plus 1, right? P means 100 here, but then when you are adding 1 does not directly get added, rather the set value will be multiplied. For integer, set value is 2, so 102. So when you just say P plus plus, it is pointing to the next element, right? That way, probably increment of pointer, you can do that. You can dereference the memory, access the value, all this you can do, but you can't add to pointers, right? This is all I can. I hope this is clear to all of you. What are two problems, Miss? Aliasing and dangling pointer, that you have to explain in detail. List of the operation I have mentioned. Enumerated data type, like if you have enumerated data type, you can probably, you can have certain values for the same. For example, I have a Boolean enumerated data type, which can consist of true, false, right? So the advantage of having this is I can refer this Boolean, I can create a Boolean of some variable, and this B can now have either true or false. I can assign some values to it, like by default it is 0 and 1, but if I want 1, 2, I can have it 1, 2, explicitly mentioned inside. Okay, otherwise if I don't mention, then by default true stands with 0 and false stands with 1 here, right? So I can refer with these values also when I'm using this variable. So these are the advantages that you find with enumerated kind. Why are reference variables in C++ better than pointers, for formal pointer? See, basically references will give us the same kind of advantage that pointer is giving. But another advantage of difference is for which the memory is not required to be created, just access an alias name to the memory, to the actual memory. But whereas for pointer, it requires some memory and it holds the address of the memory which it wants to point, rather, right? Strong typing, yesterday I have discussed, right? In Java, we have strong typing because during the runtime, the value which you give to a particular variable, it checks whether it is of the same kind or not. Otherwise, it raises an exception because it is going to check the type as well during the runtime because it is interpreted. So in most of the interpreted programming language, you find the strong typing option, right? Classify the operators. Operators are classified into arithmetic, relational. Basically, you can classify operators into three kinds from many language perspective. You can say unary, binary, and then ternary, right? Unary, binary, and ternary. Unary operators like increment, you have decrement, you have unary minus, you have dollar symbol, you have, right? This all comes under unary. And size of you have, right? And scope resolution you have, this is also unary operator. Under binary, you have arithmetic, right? You have relational, you have bitwise, you have logical, right? These all comes under binary operator. Arithmetic like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, relation, greater than, less than, greater than equal, less than equal to, double equal, not equal kind of thing. Bitwise and or not. Logical and or not kind of thing, right? Shift right, shift left, all that. Ternary is question mark colon is what's it to be the ternary operator, because you have 3 operands, right? For example, A greater than B, question mark A colon B. So what do you mean by this? Basically, it is an interpretation of if-else statement. Okay. So if A greater than B is true, then A will be assigned to A. Otherwise, B will be assigned to C. So in this, you can see there are 3 operands. This is one operand, this is second operand, and this is third operand. So since you have 3 operands, you say it is a ternary operator. So these are the generally operators available across most of the programming languages, but it's going to vary in notation from language to language. Operator precedence we have discussed, right, which we set, the language designer set, and associative also we have discussed in the last class. I hope this is all clear. I have discussed the entire, assignment 1, which is covering all maximum possible questions that have been covered from unit 1 and 2, which are going to be very much important for your external point of view. I'll probably give you some tips here, for your benefit. Okay.